You're listening to a Reliance podcast, conversations and insights about our efforts to end sexual violence in one generation.
My name is Dr. Robin Wilson. I'm a psychologist who's been working in sexual abuse prevention for nearly 34 years. In this short video, I'll be speaking about young persons with intellectual disabilities who've engaged in problematic sexual behavior. Because this is a short video, clearly I won't be able to talk about this in a comprehensive manner, but I'm going to try to hit on the most important elements, or to at least focus ourselves on a few topics that are I think particularly relevant. All kids experience profound changes during puberty, whether they're boys or girls, although the changes will be somewhat different between the genders. Think about it yourself. When you were going through that time period, it was a pretty confusing time. Your bodies were changing in ways that you maybe didn't anticipate. You were growing hair in places that you never thought hair would grow. Parts of your body were getting bigger. You were getting taller. For boys, your voice was changing. For girls, you were growing breasts. And I'm going to guess that all of a sudden, other kids became a little more interesting in ways that maybe you hadn't thought about them. Unfortunately, some kids during this time period get themselves into trouble. And some of that has to do with the fact that different parts of the body develop at different rates. And here I'm going to focus on kind of sexual development and problem-solving skills development. So we're talking about two really important aspects of how people live their lives. So sexuality is a part of life for virtually everybody, and all of us have to be able to negotiate life. Unfortunately, and let's use boys as an example here. For boys, when they start to go through puberty, they get a huge onrush of the male sex hormone testosterone. And this causes a lot of changes in boys in their body shape, but also in the way that they think. The problem is that all that sexual energy doesn't necessarily come along with an owner's manual or a guide for how to use it appropriately. Unfortunately, the part of the brain that provides them with those skills, that's this part here, it's called the prefrontal cortex. This is where your higher order problem solving skills reside. And that part of the brain, as you may know, you may have heard this in the media recently, doesn't stop developing in a lot of people until their mid-20s. So puberty, we know, for most kids is happening somewhere in the 11 to 14-year-old range, yet the part of the brain that tells them what to do with all that sexual energy isn't really developing well until quite considerably later. And this may be where some kids get themselves into trouble, because they've got lots of sexual energy, but they have insufficient sexual problem-solving ability to negotiate engagement in sexuality in safe, healthy, and respectful ways. And I want to be really clear, this is true for a lot of adolescents, not just adolescents with an intellectual disability. So this is not something that's specifically limited to kids who have kind of developmental delays and those sorts of cognitive problem, sort of cognitive processing issues. I think that one of the ways that we can really start to address these sorts of issues is to make sure that there's appropriate education available and that we have open lines of communication between youth and the people who would help them to better understand how to manage this often problematic time in life. When an adolescent engages in inappropriate sexuality, it's important for us to understand what happened and why. There are a number of different reasons why this may have happened. Was it the result of poor education? Was there a lack of interpersonal respect? Or Were there perhaps some inappropriate sexual interests or preferences at play? This can be difficult to determine for kids with an intellectual disability, and it's important for us to conduct what we call a functional behavioral analysis to figure out whether it's the goal or the means to meet the goal, or both, that needs to be the focus for intervention. Sex education is a controversial topic, and many parents don't know what is appropriate and what isn't. And depending on where you live and what the morality is that's in your culture or your background or the part of the country you live in, this can be even more difficult to figure out. Add to that your child has an intellectual disability. What's appropriate sexual education for those kids? Unfortunately, some people misunderstand that just because an intellectually disabled person is delayed in terms of intellect, that somehow that extends to other aspects of their development as well. And what we know is that in spite of whatever developmental delay may be present with respect to intellect, virtually all children go through the same pubertal changes and experience the same feelings, urges, fantasies, and sometimes confusion as to what's happening to them, both physically and in their thoughts. I think it's also really important to recognize that sex education isn't just about the mechanics of sexuality. It's not just about the birds and the bees. It's an ongoing dialogue about what's happening and how to manage those changes, that kids are experiencing in a responsible manner. Ultimately, we want all persons to have the opportunity to enjoy healthy sexuality to the full extent that they're able. And this applies to both disabled and non-disabled people, although we understand that the exact activities involved may be different because of life experiences and opportunities. However, as I've said, sometimes kids get themselves into trouble and we have to intervene. There are treatment services available for adolescents who've engaged in problematic sexuality, and there are specialized services available for kids with intellectual disabilities. I think ultimately it's really important for us not to give an intellectually disabled adolescent the impression that somehow sex is inherently bad, or worse, unattainable. We want to teach them sexual responsibility and help them to understand how to manage their feelings, urges, and fantasies in appropriate ways. We also understand that some families will require assistance beyond treatment. Thankfully, those services are available. There are experts out there, there are treatment professionals, there are people who are available to help families and individuals who don't know exactly what to do. Sex education and treatment professionals can help, and there are also a number of publications available. Anyone watching this video is welcome to contact me at my email address, which is robin@rjwphd.com. That's robin@rjwphd.com. I'm happy to help, and if you send me an email, I can usually sort of send you in the right direction with respect to publications, and I'll take a few moments to see if I can find someone to refer you to if you think that would be helpful. Thank you.